Hello lovely people. I'm surrounded with mess at the minute and I should really be doing housework, but I'm not going to. I'm going to come on and do my August happy video, and I'm going to ignore the mess and make sure I don't pan the camera around, but I will be doing housework afterwards. So it's September. How has that even happened? Yesterday I uploaded my tarot journal spreads for September, and I couldn't believe that. And so I'm going to start with my tarot journal because this little book is making me so happy. I am absolutely loving using it still. It's I think I'm going to have to do a separate video about why I love it so much and why it's worth tarot journaling for me anyway. I wanted to share some of the key things in here just to show you some spreads. So this was the overview readings, and I got the World card for last month's reading. So, and I kind of feel the energy. Hi Lulu. I kind of feel the energy of the World card in last month because I did feel quite joyous. It felt like a completion in a way. It felt like a completion of a healing journey I've been on, where I'm out and through and beginning to embrace the lessons and to integrate the learning. And there's a book I've read this month, which I'll share later, which again linked to that. The weekly. Oh, and look at the oracle card I pulled for the month. The oracle card was transformation, and that's so apt. I did a few daily readings. I got a little bit behind because for me August is it's a very practical month. It's about getting the kids ready for school. I've got 3 kids, 3 different settings all spread out. I had special needs transport to organise for my one daughter's school, which had all changed because they changed the school hour openings for transport kids to stagger entry into the school because of coronavirus. So it was all changed. There was school uniforms and shoe shopping, and it was just frantic. So a lot of the kind of month's activities just got lost in the humdrum whirl of everyday mothering. But yeah, the overall theme of the month does kind of sit within chaos and the World card, because I felt really lovely and good this month. But the daily readings kind of, there's lots of spaces there. I completely missed full moon and ended up doing a lot of new moon work. And then I started the 75 hard. I don't know if you can see that. That's my tick sheet for that. So I'm on day 15 today of that. So that's been spectacular and it's been challenging. And I've had a few tantrums about it. And it's seen me doing a 45-minute exercise around the patio after all the kids have been asleep in bed under the full moon, doing leg lunges around the patio with the dogs trying to bite my bum. But anything to get that second 45-minute workout in. So that's been great. You can see I've got all the ticks. I haven't had to go back to day 1 yet. So that's 75 hard. It's any diet of your choice. No cheat meals, no cheat days, no alcohol, a gallon of water a day, and 2 45-minute exercise sessions a day, one of which has to be outside, and to read 10 pages of a non-fiction book a day. So I've been doing that in there. And the self-care and gratitude pages, they're not all filled up. There's lots and lots of empty space at the back, which I'm going to use for this month's gratitude as well. I just made that book a bit too big. This section here, Find Your Purpose Friday, is the Find Your Purpose Fridays. Friday Purpose. Oh, Jen, I've forgotten what it's called. Anyway, I'll link it down below. It's a series of videos that Jen over at Science to Soul Tarot with Jen is putting on. which has been really interesting so far. So that's what this section is for. Look, Jen, I've done all my homework, up to date with that. So that's been fun to take part in this month. And the last page in here is the review page, which I really used this month. So I made sure that in my September pages, I put another nice big review page space in there. So yeah, it's been chaotic, but it kind of has the world card energy in. I feel like I've stepped into a new cycle of life, which I'm finally ready for after shit, really, and divorce and food addiction to numb the crap that people have thrown at me. And I'm finally stepping out of that, so it's been fun to record it all in my journal. And another book that I mentioned earlier, the book that I mentioned earlier about integrating the learning of healing, which I feel that world card energy kind of sums up for August, was this book. This book is fantastic. It's Journey to the Dark Goddess by Jane Meredith. And it's a book about transforming yourself by going to the places that break you open. Sometimes we journey there by choice. We hear the whispers of the Dark Goddess. We begin to listen to our soul, to feel our gut poke us saying things aren't right. Sometimes the rug gets pulled out from underneath us and we're hurtling down to the underworld to meet the Dark Goddess with no warning and no preparation time. And those are those shock events in life that send us plummeting down. And sometimes we go seeking her out for self-development work. So there are different ways of journeying down to the Dark Goddess. And this book talks about all of those ways. And it does it by taking mythological stories and the myths around journeys down to the underworld. So stories like Persephone and Psyche and Inanna, is it? Inanna, and their meetings and down in the underworld and their journeys down. And it takes those three specific myths and it dissects them into 4 sections. So preparing to descend, the descent itself, what to do when you get into the underworld, and how to come back up the ascent. And it uses the framework of those myths to relate to our own lives today, and how we too can either cope if we've been plummeted into a journey to the underworld, or if we're choosing to visit the underworld. And it is spectacular. It speaks of transformation, of true healing, of integrating healing, of working through cycles on repeat that keep coming round, that are controlling you or stopping you from living. It's just a brilliant, brilliant book, and I absolutely love the use of myths to do it. And the eye-opening aha moments in this book for me were to do with the ascent, the section on the ascent, and the fact that you can get stuck in the underworld if you've been plummeted down and you've got used to the terrain and you begin to understand the terrain and the journey that you've been on, and you know your path and you know where you need to heal. You can know all of that knowledge and yet not ascend. You can get stuck down there. And that was a massive aha moment for me. I'd got so much book knowledge, so much trauma knowledge. I knew my triggers. I understood my triggers. I'd found every core wound in the book. I'd got all the knowledge there, and in many respects I was in a much better place, but I hadn't truly ascended. And it was learning how to integrate some of that knowledge that this book led me on. And so it's absolutely brilliant. It's also really creative. It shows you creative ways of mapping that journey, both down and back up again. It's like shadow work, but with goddesses shining the way and myths shining the way. And it just speaks to my soul. If you want to do any sort of shadow work or self-discovery work or healing or transformation work, and you like the divine feminine, this book is such a good read. It's really practical, loads of rituals in it. It doesn't just stay in woohoo territory of this is a nice thing to think about. It actually gives you practical resources, ritual and step-by-step approaches to do each section. Really good. It's not going anywhere because I'm on a depth year and I'm not jumping from one thing to another anymore. I'm going to integrate the knowledge in this. I am going to do some ritual work and just pay homage to the Dark Goddess. Which makes me laugh because if I'm gonna lean forward, my goddess that I pulled today from my moon oracle was Hecate, who's also a dark goddess. So it just made me smile. It just reminded me, come back to this book. Don't jump to the next thing too quick. So that, with the transformation card from the Literary Witches oracle, it's been quite a telling time with the Dark Goddess. So shadow work with goddesses. Another book I read was this one, which also is a shadow work book, but a completely different kettle of fish. This one was a huge disappointment, I'm afraid to say. It says Tarot for Troubled Times. Confront your shadow, heal yourself, transform the world. And it doesn't really do what it says on the tin. It doesn't, it's not really a tarot book really. It gives you some archetypes of the majors and gives you positive affirmations with each major. It also gives you a kind of shadow work affirmation, and it gives you an action that you can take into the community to transform the world. That's that bit, which is a huge section of the book. And then either side of that section, the front bit is kind of just a general overview of shadow work, which I had problems with from the get-go, because this book its general stance on the shadow is that your shadow is the crappy bits of yourself that you want to change, that you kind of know about and you know you need to work on. And for me, that isn't what shadow work really is. Shadow work, the very fact it's in shadow means you don't know about it, and you have to look for trigger reactions in yourself and an emotional dysregulation. You catch yourself in emotional dysregulation where your reactions aren't matching the situation that you're in. That for me is a signpost for shadow work. You find a shadow and then you go delving. I think if you already think something about yourself, it's not in the shadow. And also the shadow is full of good stuff as well as bad stuff, and this book didn't touch on that either. So right from the get-go I was kind of thinking, not sure about this. It was very glib, it was very shallow. I mean, before we even got to anything to do with tarot, there was like huge sections on like not to fall prey to psychic vampires and energy work. But it didn't relate any of that back to tarot work at all. It did give you some spreads in here, and it did talk about finding your birth card and your year card and how to do that. But again, not really shadow work. And then it gave you a few spreads. And then it went on to talk really shallowly about magic and the need for magic. And it just tried to do too much. It tried to be too many things and deliver too much. And it ended up really delivering nothing. Within a day of reading it, I'd forgotten it. And the section at the back about being socially active and like joining the body political was so glib and beginnery. It wasn't really worth reading, so massive disappointment with that. So I then went on to read another shadow book I'd got, which was recommended by Natalia over at Ouroboros. And this one, which is Owning Your Own Shadow, Understanding the Dark Side of the Psyche by Robert A. Johnson, is a little gem. It doesn't give you any practical tips on how to do shadow work, but what it does do brilliantly is it explains Carl Jung's take on what he meant by the shadow. And I tell you what, it had me going, what, a few times. This is a gem, and this really clarifies the fact that the shadow is made up of good and bad aspects of yourself that you've repressed. In fact, it talks about like the absolute gold treasure of who you are normally gets repressed into the shadow. I mean, think of that. You have gold treasure that's your very core that will be in shadow that you don't even know about. That blows my mind. That just should make all of us want to run and study shadow work and do the work, because there's treasure to be mined. And the reason it gets delegated to shadow is this thing called, and I've forgotten it, what's it called? The civilizing process. So from very early on, we learn from the culture we're in and the mini culture that we're growing up in, so our families, what is acceptable and what isn't. And that civilizing process tries to level us all out to normal. Anything less than normal gets shoved into the shadow, because none of us want to be seen as less than normal, which is understandable. But also the things that are better than normal, that are extraordinary, that are our golden touches to our soul, those in the normalizing process, with us trying to fit in and to be accepted, they get relegated as well. And that completely blew my mind. It also made me think of how tougher childhoods with controlling parents, there's a lot that can get relegated to shadow, because you know you're not allowed to shine. It just completely blew my mind. The other thing this book talks about, it kind of talks about your psyche as being like a seesaw, like a plank on a seesaw. So you've got the central point and everything has to remain balanced. So if you do something good or kind or creative, then it goes to one side and that goes up. But it has to remain balanced. So something, this end goes into shadow and it always has to stay in equilibrium. And that I thought, no, surely not. And it kind of spoke about, you know, the guy that goes around doing good deeds in the community, but then comes home to kick his dog. And that a lot of people keep pets so that they can be mean to their pets, not consciously, but like you can yell at your dog if you feel like you've been put on or something. And I just thought, no, surely that's not how it works. And then it went on to talk about artists. So, of course, my ears immediately pricked up. And that the people who are artists and are constantly creating and putting creativeness out into the world. Creativeness, is that a word? Anyway, you know what I mean. That they're often incredibly difficult to live with and often have incredibly difficult private lives because of that balance, for things dropping into the shadow all the time. Thinking of my 3 kids, they've got a professional artist as a mum. My ex-husband is a musician. And I just thought, poor kids, I need to do some more work with them. So, you know, are we then destined to be dark and difficult if we're creative and good? The book goes on to say no, but you've got to be aware of that balance, and You can do ritual or imagining, or like write letters you're going to burn, or like hit a tennis ball against a wall, but somehow you've got to vent that shadow out to stop an accumulation of the dark side. And it said if the dark side leaks out, if you've let it grow too much and leak out, and it becomes autonomous, it can become this raging monster. And again, having suffered with post-traumatic stress disorder, where I lay myself open to codependency and people-pleasing, I know now that when I get triggered, which is less and less, thank goodness, but when I've been triggered in the past, I have become that raging monster, and it is the shadow escaping after years of trying to do for people. So it really spoke truth to me. And then to add to how brilliant I thought this book was, it then began to speak about sacred geometry and the mandala, but also something called the mandala, which I've never even heard of. And the mandala is this almond shape here that you can see in the middle of the chalice well lid at Glastonbury, and it's everywhere in sacred art. So this is the mandala and this is a mandala, and the mandala is that balanced, it's that balanced place where your shadow isn't raging, like no end is out of control. So it links it all to sacred geometry, which I found so fascinating. So this tiny little read is absolutely brilliant if you are interested in shadow work. So that was the third book I read. Also, I'm on a depth year, so I feel like pressure's off. It's lovely. So I've gone back to Tarot 101, which is a brilliant book if you're learning tarot. No matter what level you're at, this is brilliant. And I am going through it slower now. I'm picking a chapter a month to do a deep dive on, because it's quick to read. But if you want to do the journaling and the exercises and answer all the questions and explore tarot decks using the information it gives you, it takes longer to do. And that's the whole point of depth year for me. I want to spend time being able to delve into the exercises in books like this, or into the rituals in books like this, and like not to jump to the next 5 books I've bought, but to say spend the next 5 months getting these rituals into my everyday, or spending the next 12 months actually doing the work in this book, so the knowledge becomes part of who I am. And that was, for me, was the push into depth year, because I felt like I was racing from one book to the next book to the next book to the next book to the next study, and nothing was really sticking. So this month I made something stick. So I've studied the chapter on male archetypes in the tarot, which linked the male archetype to the number 4 because of the Emperor card, and then to the elements of 4 things within the tarot. So things like the elements, and which led me into elemental studies of some of my favourite decks, namely the Tarot of the She this month. So I did a deep dive on one chapter, and it was really lovely to do, really calming to stop the racing, and truly useful rather than just racing through from book to book. So I'm going to carry on with that next month too. So those are the books. For the decks, I am loving all my decks so much. I think even more so now I'm in depth here. Now, one deck that I hadn't really used was this one, the Everyday Enchantment Tarot by Poppy Palin. It's a beautiful deck, it's really relatable, but I hadn't really used it. So for the first week of this month, I mean, look at the backs, they're so gorgeous. For the first week of this month, I started working with this deck. It's a beautiful reader. It gives really lovely messages. they're really clear. I think because of the nature of the deck as well, they just really relate to the everyday for me. I think it's the nature of the imagery. Look at that, the dog's howling. It's the wording in the book. It's the narrative she tells of the stories of the images that you're looking at. It's just a really nice reader. So that was really fun to use for the first week. I began to pair it with an oracle because I've started wanting to pair with oracles. And I paired it with the Messenger Oracle, which doesn't really go. I know it's kind of a different... what's going on with that light? There we go. It's a different art style. It's not really themed correctly. It doesn't even aesthetically look similar. So why on earth would I be pairing it? Simply because I wanted to use this deck. I was desperate to use it because I think it is absolutely beautiful. So although aesthetically it was slightly jarring to use the two together, I mean, you can see it doesn't really match at all. I just couldn't wait to use this deck, and I wanted to use this deck too, so I just put them together. And if you can take the aesthetics out of play, which I only could for a few days, I had to stop in the end because they didn't really match. The actual readings they gave were lovely. So look at these cards, they're so lovely. So I do need to think of an oracle that will work better with this one. And I've already got the deck that will work perfectly with this one because I've got the Dreams of Gaia oracle. Yeah, we're one deep study at a time, so I haven't got round to that tarot yet. But these are lovely, and I just couldn't resist working with them. Oh, there's a big fly in here that wants to be on camera. It's like, oh. So anyway, those were the two I started with. Both lovely decks, both lovely. And I'd intended to work with the Everyday Enchantment Tarot longer than I did, but I got seduced away by what is becoming a deck that I literally just can't resist. I love it so much. Oh, the Tarot of the She. It's such a brilliant deck. But I paired it with that. These two, now this is the Raincoast Tarot by Christoph James, and this is the pocket version. This is the deck that I won and Christoph very kindly sent me. And this deck, although he told me that it was, it doesn't come with a booklet and the artwork is very busy in places. He told me that it's purely designed to be read as a Rider-Waite clone. It's imagery in there. I feel like he actually climbed inside my head and took all the imagery and everything in my life that means something symbolically to me, and he placed it in one tarot deck. This tarot is my inner landscape on cards. So I am using Rider-Waite meanings with it, but I am also piecing together the cards with my own narrative. I call it my soul narrative. It has my own language. It has all my own meanings. I am letting my own soul narrative for this deck override everything else. Sometimes it fits with Rider-Waite, sometimes it doesn't. And that's just the way it goes. I keep getting this card over and over again. And it's just beautiful. And paired with the Tarot of the She, they work so beautifully together, both visually, I think, and in meanings. So I've been using Tarot of the Sheep for the main reading and then this as clarification. It's quite nice that it's a smaller version. I've looked on Christoph's site and he does have a borderless main tarot still available, which would be a dream, but I can't do it at the moment. But he's got this pocket version as well, and it's absolutely fabulous to work with, and I love the images together. I just love it. I think it works fantastically well next to each other. The two things combined have been giving spectacular readings that have blown my mind apart. They have been transformative, they have been revealing, they have been truthful, they've been accurate, and it's been something else. So I've been working with these. I mean, look at those together, absolutely fantastic. I've been working with both of these all this month and I couldn't put it down. I just couldn't. And I am going to carry on working with those next month and possibly doing a journal for each one to do a proper study of the decks fully. So that's been lovely to use those. And then another oracle that I keep being drawn to, and it's a crazy, mad, insane, doesn't make any sense oracle to me. But every time I pick it up, I go completely fizzy with how lovely it is. It might have something to do with the linen card stock. This was the card I pulled for all of last month, which turned out to be completely true, transformation. And I've pulled this one for this month, Emily Bronte, Fantasy. But I think I want to carry on working with it. I want to find a tarot deck that will pair with it. And I want to carry on giving it some time and attention. It is odd. It doesn't really make immediate sense, or even sense when you've spent time with it. But I keep being called to it, and every time I open the box, I feel really happy with it. It's the oddest sensation, and I don't want to put it away. Look at the backs, aren't they gorgeous? Why are these half and half? Oh gosh, they're all completely muddled. I've obviously at some point dropped this deck. Oh my gosh, they're so muddled. So it's just a really unusual deck. Look, you can see the cardstock, you can see the linen there. It's really beautiful. I didn't think I was a cardstock snob until I felt this deck. And now I would be tempted, go away fly, I would be tempted to buy a deck just for this cardstock. Is that a terrible thing to admit? So yeah, this is going to have to stay out next month as well. I only used it for the card of the month reading, and then I kept getting it out to shuffle and look at the images, and but there's just something about it. I need to work with it and work out what it is about this deck that I love so much. So not many decks, because I got seduced by two that have blown my mind, but it's been a fun month. For creating, I have been in the art studio, not much because I've been busy doing practical mom things, getting ready for coming out of lockdown and school starting. I did start doing some shadow work, meeting my lost children of the shadow, when I had that a trigger earlier this month. And I've already shared her. She's the start of a bigger drawing and a bigger project idea. But she's kind of sat on the side, ignored for a few weeks. Just life gets in the way, doesn't it? Some of the little studies that were coming up, these are from our conversations me and my shadow child, and I've explored different things that we've been talking about with just some little pieces here or there. I've also done the new full moon painting as well, which is for the harvest moon or the corn moon, which was in the video that I uploaded yesterday, which is a fox jumping out and a little mouse down here, and all the corn and the full moon. So this is for just a 12-month series. I'm doing one a month for each full moon. This was the first one I did 2 months ago, the buck moon. The sturgeon moon is upstairs on my altar at the moment, and when I come to replace the altar on the next Sabbat, I will put this one on there as well. That light is absolutely terrible, isn't it? There you go. So it's just quite nice getting a little series of watercolours, and this is me practising painting because I'm not a painter. The watercolour is completely new to me this year, because I trained in textiles and making fine art with textiles, not with paints. So that was it in the art studio. New experience wise, oh gosh, can you say going outside is a new experience? I think in 2020 you can say anything, can't you? But just going out, going back to the supermarket again, that fly is determined to be on camera. Just going back to the supermarket again, that felt bizarre and strange. Going into town to do the kids' school shoe shopping and uniform shopping, that was pretty terrifying. And going out in a mask, and realising that people aren't socially distancing and aren't necessarily wearing masks where they should, and it was just a bit terrifying, to be honest. But it's all a learning curve in this bizarre 2020. But also looking after myself with this hard 75, which I'm doing, that has been that's been joyous. And I'm on day 15, and I feel so much better about myself, and the fact that I'm sticking to quite a big challenge, and I'm doing it for me to feel better. There's already big differences happening, and my foot injury is 1,000 times better, so I don't feel so wobbly on my feet. I feel like I've turned a corner with it. 2 lots of exercise a day, one of them outside, does a lot for your mental health when you're doing it consistently. So that's been fantastic. So it's been a fabulous month, and I'm looking forward to September. It feels like a breath of air finally coming out of the house. The kids all back at school, although that's pretty terrifying with a vulnerable child. But I'm just praying that we all stay well, not just me and the kids in my environment, but all of you guys as well, as lockdowns lift gradually. I just pray that everybody stays well, and that we all find our way out of what has been one hell of a year, hasn't it, guys? It's been one hell of a year. So yeah, let's go forward into September, hoping for the best and focusing on self-care and doing the things that make us happy. I've loved watching all of your reviews of the month. You guys on here know who you are, who interact regularly with me, and your channels and your amazing videos that I love. You're all so special to me. You have such a special place in my heart. There's been some amazing content made by you people. I want to make some VR responses, even if you haven't got a hashtag. I keep watching videos thinking a comment isn't enough. I need to do a VR, but real life gets in the way, and I run out of time, and I don't get round to doing it. but all of it, the content that I'm watching is spectacular and interesting, and it's causing me to grow. Not only is it entertaining me, it's causing me to think about things, to grow as a person. It's helping me heal. So I'm incredibly grateful to all of you who are part of my tribe on YouTube. You're a pretty damn special lot. So if nobody's told you that today, let me be the one to tell you. So moving forward for next month, I've still got the most obscene amount of unboxings to do from the things that I bought last year that I haven't got to. So I'll be doing loads more unboxings next month. Hopefully more time in the art studio. And sharing a bit more of my art, I think, with you, because there are projects that I'd love to show you that I think might be interesting. It's probably the bit of me that's the gold that I don't share. And I just thought, yeah, we need to put a bit more art on this channel, as well as the tarot and the witchcraft and all my learning. So I hope you'll find it interesting. I hope you will stick around for a bit longer with me. And just thanks, guys. You're all completely incredible to have around. So that's it, my August happies. Praying that September is equally good and wonderful. And keep safe, everybody. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.